What is up, down, and sideways? Yeah, beautiful individuals. We are back. It is League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. And just as quickly as MSI is done, we got to get ready for summer because it's less than a 2-week turnaround. The LCS kicks off.
Yeah, very little break between the LCS, finals going off, and then we're right off to Iceland to have whatever you want to call Cloud9 over there was.
A trip. It
And
was a
then
trip.
we're maybe tripped up a little bit, but now we've made our way back. We've wiped our tears, and we're ready for the NA LCS summer.
And the way to start, as always, as is tradition, we're doing a little power rankings. There weren't any crazy roster changes, really, in the offseason in the LCS. I mean, that's usually the case. It all happens before spring, not so much in between spring and summer.
Yeah, I think there is still absolutely some very interesting choices and changes that happened throughout the league, and some very impactful to discuss. Overall, though, I think a lot of people have discussed this before, is that change from spring to summer, not so much time, the risk that is involved with making one of these changes. A lot of organizations don't want to make it.
Yeah, and the number 10 team on our list, they're pretty used to being number 10 at this point. We are talking about the Golden Guardians, and for an organization that came in during franchising, it's now been 3+ years we've been talking about them in the LCS, and the highlight of the organization is making playoffs once. That's it.
And the problem is that's it. Not only is that it and the only highlight, it's such a small fraction of that time period that you've had, and that's we've seen in many traditional sports. We've seen that the franchisee coming in and struggling for a long time, try to find that footing against the competition, the talent level that is here, and then to not only find a level of success, but to keep that continual success. Not even close to those levels from the Golden Guardians. And of course, questions abound when you have the cash and you're willing to put the cash in. On the basketball court side, not so much on the esports side, questioning that commitment. But what you see is also a questionable commitment to this roster that we see the changes made for summer.
And they're one of the teams that did make changes coming into summer. Niles was the most flamed player in the LCS. He is now not in the starting lineup. It's Solo, who was on the Academy squad, getting the promotion, as well as Chime from the Academy squad, who'll be making his LCS debut at support. I mean, either of those changes, you remember Solo's last time in the LCS, he wasn't exactly lighting it up to close out his time with FlyQuEST.
Mine specifically, I don't know about Eric's, but specifically my issues with the Golden Guardians and with these type of moves is that you had already established the idea behind Niles and Newbie. And yes, of course, knowing that the performance was poor, the results that you were gaining at the LCS level, that was understood when you were making this roster, making this decision, that it was going to be very dark. It was going to have some dark moments, but that you were building towards something. You needed that experience, that time, the potential to get through it, and to switch out after one split and not let yourself have that chance to look back at what happened in spring and get another crack at it. That's disappointing to me. And then you add on, well, what's the replacement situation? Well, specifically in the top side, it's Solo, someone that was signed in originally for the Academy in this situation, and that we've seen plenty of times at the LCS level. And that's not to say someone can't come into the LCS or be around the LCS, a journeyman type of guy that we see in other sports, a situation for Solo that has worked out, and he has had contributions that have been meaningful to the teams that he has stepped into. It's never lasted as well, and there's other issues as far away from just the performance that leads me to say that this is not the correct move for the Golden Guardians.
I just really hope this isn't the end for Niles, because it's so harsh. One split, you get one split on the LCS, that's your audition and you're done. We've seen time and time again players develop so much, especially after that first split when you've learned so much. You need that time away from playing, whether these professional games, to kind of sit back, say, okay, this is what I really needed to improve on that split. That time for reflection is when guys have their biggest growth.
And look, yes, I understand the stats are not pretty. They're not in their favor type of
gross.
situation. But they're not in anybody's favor on the Golden Guardians roster. And especially understanding that, yeah, that's what it is now. And that does not have to be acceptable moving forward. But again, to cut it short, to run it at this point after one is certainly not acceptable to me.
Yeah, so the change is not really what you're looking for if you're a fan of Golden Guardians. They're still a full NA team, though. At least they got that going for them. Number 9 is one spot away from an all-NA team. They still have an import slot. We're talking about Immortals, and it's the same 5 coming back, and a lot of people, myself included, would say that the 7-11 performance from Spring was an over-performance for what you're expecting from this Immortals squad.
That's the crazy thing, right? That's what we're gonna try to sell you on here is what you saw from Spring seemed to be a couple of slip ups from other teams allowing for these situations. A couple of, you think about the early performance against Team Liquid, where yes, you want to be making sure that you give that props to Revenge in the top side and what he was doing. That is important, and his continued development, his continued adaptation, and being more comfortable at the LCS level of play. That certainly is important and a piece of potential to keep an eye on with Immortals. But that might be a bad it for the most part for this ninth place in the Power Rankings Immortals roster.
I mean, I guess you can say they still got the Aussie bot lane, and based on what Pentanet GG was doing to NA at the LCS, keep as many Aussie boys as you can.
Yeah, absolutely getting the OPL love. It just certainly is a situation where when you look back, when you think back on Immortals and you see how they were getting things done, where they were powerful, when they were powerful, you don't see a lot of that transitioning towards the summer and thinking about these teams, what we have in the top 5 and how they'll be able to answer. You don't see them making ground in that same type of pattern. And again, the big thing is those wins, those big upsets that you're pulling off. I don't see that happening as things tighten up in the summer for a squad like Immortals.
And the changes that are happening, it's not to the starting 5, but you got to look at the Academy squad changes coming into this year, because both Onda and Viper are signed to the Academy squad for Immortals now. You remember them. They were on no org in the LCS Proving Ground this year, who won the entire event. Everyone was kind of hyped up on that roster because it wasn't affiliated with an organization, and they still won the whole event. Viper and Anda we're familiar with on the LCS stage, but I fully expect one of maybe both of these guys to be getting some starts this split.
Yeah, and deservedly so. Their performances with no org and what they did to get, a jump back in here, get that attention. And now it's what you do with this opportunity. And as you said, expectation would be on one, if not both of them, to find a way into this roster, try and make an impact, try to get that mojo going for Immortals, because again, they're, outside of talking about Revenge, what you could see from him, the continued type of development, you're not looking too hot around the rest of the Immortals team.
Yeah, it's not all pro level Xerxes jungling that we've seen, and it's, let's face it, around him, not nearly as much to work with as when he was getting those all pro nods over in EU. Now we climb up to number 8, and this spot's maybe the harshest, but based on what we saw from Spring out of this squad, you got him, slide him here, and that is FlyQuest. You and I were both expecting more out of them in Spring. Hopefully, a new logo, a new brand coming into this year is the change that they need.
Hey, they've at least kept the momentum going with the positivity on Twitter from the FlyQuest brand and account. I can appreciate
the new logo
that.
Looks slick. I'll give them that for sure.
New logo working in pretty good, feeling nice. Not feeling so nice about where we put them in the power rankings, because this to me is the absolute low. This is the basement, the bottom end for FlyQuest, and where you could be thinking about them for this summer split. We've talked about them many times throughout Spring and what the potential could have been, what it should have been for these players looking to establish themselves at the LCS level, mixed in with veterans like Licorice and what he should be able to contribute and provide as an anchor for the team in the top side. Well, parts of that on both ends didn't work out, right? You have the veteran part of this roster not exactly taking that big step, that shield in front of the younglings that you'd like to have from them. And then when you're looking at the young guys stepping in, it's young guys stepping in. There's going to be an experience. There's going to be mistakes happening through. It's going to be taken advantage of by the extremely veteran, import lead and rosters that we have at the very top of NA.
So if you're a big fan of Tree, C, and B Quest, I'm gonna give you the positives here and how they can finish higher. They just didn't show enough in spring for me to put them higher than 8, but they can absolutely still be a playoff team with this roster. Licorice did not perform nearly to the level we were probably expecting in spring. The meta now is much better for Johnson. Based on what we're seeing at MSI, we're going to have a whole lot less Senna games. We can have some Jinx, Tristana, and Kai'Sa. Any of those 3 picks, throw in the Xayah. You want to see Johnson on those because he should be the featured guy on this team.
He really should be. And his continued development is very important because where he is and where you can expect and what you hope to be getting from him is at a different pace than some of these other members on the team, right? He fits in kind of that middle ground when you're talking about someone who's as veteran as Licorice on this roster and what he's done in his career and the career he's had. And then again, the guy's fresh from academy, talking about Palafox, talking about Diamond, what you can do. Absolutely, it is on Johnson to be, to emerge even more as a star, as an emerging player in this region, to take FlyQuest to that next level. As far as our expectations and what we saw and what they were delivered upon in spring, you can't help but put them here in this type of spot, down in the power rankings. But that's not without that understanding, without that condition, knowing that they can absolutely be one of these squads, making some jumps if things go the right way and the progress keeps going.
I think the other 2 positives also that you can say is Palafox gets a split under his belt. We just talked about needing that in between to grow. I expect him to be better. And Dreams is still on the roster. I feel like they got to be starting week 1 with him over Diamond because Diamond had a rough split.
Diamond did have a rough split. And that's, again, another thing that we talk about, not in a situation of, cast him aside, it's done. But as you said, you do have someone on the roster that is very capable, that is in a situation that can provide a different look. And especially with the way things went and what you have in Johnson, it is not out of the question to feel like that is the move or the right way to try and, spark some better results for this team.
The crazy numbers for FlyQuest, they only had 6 wins in spring. It came against 3 teams. They 2-0'd Golden Guardians, 2-0'd CLG, and of course, 2-0'd TSM. That was all their wins. They only beat 3 teams.
God bless the 2-0 against TSM.
FlyQuest, it doesn't seem to matter what their roster is. They're always good for at least 1 or 2 wins against TSM in the regular season. Number 7 now on this list, and this is another tricky one to rank because you look at the first half of the split and CLG has absolutely no business being number 7 on anybody's power rankings. But what everyone's going to remember is the second half of the split, specifically the last 2 weeks of the LCS where they were picking up wins against Cloud9 and Team Liquid. They look to really start turning things around. And remember, they only played 9 games with this version of the roster with Polbelter and Broxa actually there.
I'm going all in on the positivity train for CLG. And I know that might be a sign that I've completely lost it, guys, because for CLG, it sounds crazy even when I say it. But when you're thinking about how they played, what they were doing towards the end of the spring split, what they put together as that 5-man roster, when all 5 were finally there, the dream put together, you had it paying off in multiple aspects for this team and how they were able to compete against that top 5 that we talk about in the LCS. Because, you have to be assuming that bottom, part, you got to be taking care of your business there and ambush it away. Because if you want to be making that climb, you cannot be losing to the bottom tier competition in the LCS situation. CLG is not exactly above any of those type of things happening.
They lost a bad game to Golden Guardians right after beating, Cloud9 Team Liquid. So they're still CLG at heart.
So that's still there, but absolutely the way that you think about them and the way that the mindset is in the community needs to be trending towards the positive side, given the way that they have performed. And again, the 5 men together, what they were doing, and hoping that momentum continues, that roster synergy is continued to be built upon throughout this offseason, the communication, all of those things can continue to get better for CLG with this roster, what they've shown the potential. I'm buying in. I'm in at least for the little bit here right now.
I'm just a bit of a sucker for the storyline for CLG because you basically have 5 veteran players who were, kind of on the downward trajectory of their career, kind of all bundled up together here to try and make a run. So it was happy to see them do that towards the end of spring split. And a guy like Finn in particular, his stock was at an all-time low coming to the LCS after his Worlds run with Rogue, where he was, getting slammed by some of the best top laners in the world at the time. So, most people probably would. But he had a fantastic debut split in the LCS, and I think really showcased that he is still a really good top lane.
Yeah, and he's a very interesting part about this CLG lineup and what they put out there. And I think what you outlined is exactly the point of why it's so interesting. Is that story from Europe? What happened and how people look down upon really his performance, his production for Rogue and what they were doing, and especially up against that international competition. And I'll tell you what, they were not exactly throwing in the easiest group for him to carve himself out any performances
and where he
against.
fit on Rogue, with Larson inspired Han Sama, he was the forgotten about member. But now on CLG, we've seen him get a lot of carry attention and actually be focal points of their team.
He has handled the featured player role on CLG more or less 100%. In that top side, being that big dude up there, wheeling around, feeling great for the team. And his performances have been major improvements in that. I think he's brought some of that nice European flair where he said, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to push my lane through and I'm going to be that one that you have to answer to situation. I like what I've seen from them. I like the way that CLG was playing around him. These are big things and big positives that you can build towards and build on in that summer split that we've talked about.
I know all the major fan bases, Team Liquid, Cloud9, TSM, they're still very much the big boys of North America. But FlyQuest, with all the environment stuff that they've done, they got Voyboy as a streamer under their banner now, and CLG players like Wild Turtle, Finn, Broxa, some of the just most likable players in the league. Those are two of the most likable, and you feel like you need to root for teams in the LCS.
And if there was an organization that was in some desperate need of some reasons that you would want to cheer for them, want to feel good about them, CLG.
Yeah, now they just need to, somehow translate to that. I don't know, maybe an actual playoff run of some kind, because it's been a very long time since we saw CLG doing that. Now we get to the number 6 team, and this is another tricky one. I feel like you could argue 5 and 6 either way, potentially. We're going with Evil Geniuses, who had the 1-3 playoff exit right away to TSM. Only offseason move that they're having to the starting lineup is Deftly is out, and Danny, 17-year-old AD carry rookie, getting promoted from their academy squad. I feel like the Deftly move is single-handedly and solely because of his performance in that TSM series.
Which is unfortunate. I mean, it is partly from that series. It's partly Evil Geniuses. It's been no secret that they had been trying to either, make a change, upgrade, whatever you want to call it from their perspective, away from Deftly, even as far as just this off season, right? The off season that we had just had heading towards this year, they were looking to ship out and try and get on the other side. TSM lost, putting them in that dumpster bin for that performance in the playoffs. What you look at with Evil Geniuses and how I overall feel about them, what we saw from spring, is I can't help but feel disappointed. I felt like they underperformed, underachieved on what they could have as a roster or with the top end talent that they had to execute on. I feel like where they ended up, what they ended up, and now the changes that they're making is a big risk heading towards this summer. I understand the potential of someone like Danny and what you're bringing in, but that's not meant to be without saying what Deftly provided in the level of skill and his numbers in the LCS. That's not just instantly, snap your fingers, the guy stepping in can do that. That is something that we have been seeing and know has been taken for granted from other teams before. To get that level of production again is going to be a question mark for the Evil Geniuses, if not to try and get even more production.
And we were talking before that TSM series. Afterwards, of course, everyone's flaming Deftly, saying he was never good, the revisionist history and everything. But the whole regular season and leading up to that playoff series, Deftly alongside Impact were the most consistent players on EG, because Svenskeren and Jizuke were losing their minds in 50% of the games on the Rift. Throw Ignar in there too.
And to be fair, yes, Jizuke is, sometimes finding those OMG pop-off moments that were swinging things in favor.
So walking under turrets, dying every now and then.
The problem is we're still getting that part from Jizuke, so you can't give that full, superstar grade credit in that situation, in that position. And then again, as you said, the consistency from Impact and from Definitely were the real parts for this thing. And when you look back at the ADCs, right, you're looking at who we had and the level of performances that we got. Definitely fits into that in the top half, let alone more or less probably in that top 4 that you're talking about from this past split, the stats and what he was accomplishing. So again, it's not just an easy plug and play type of situation for the Evil Geniuses and what type of production you're going to be getting replacing Definitely.
I'm excited to see Danny step into the starting lineup, because you look at now, all of a sudden we've got a precedent and a pedigree, a history of rookie AD carries, domestic AD carries in North America. You start, Tactical and Johnson. You have Neo last split, maybe Danny coming in this split. With Doublelift retiring, it fully feels like the new wave of AD carries are already here.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to see what he is able to do, because as we know, we have been keeping track of him as a player throughout the academy scene and everything else, but still needs to be able to provide at the LCS level. And again, the question of who you're replacing, can you do it? Can you step into it? What the stability, lack thereof, that we have seen from the performances of Evil Geniuses is certainly still a question mark for me. This but when you compare it towards FlyQuest, we were talking about this is the bottom end and this is where you got to be putting them. Feels more or less the same with Evil Geniuses, that this is towards that bottom end where they can bottom out in the LCS.
They could get lower. They could get a little lower.
I guess so. But I'm really hoping that they can find a way to push into that top 5 once again and provide a level of test, that we need to be having amongst these teams in the LCS.
I'm less concerned about Danny stepping into this lineup. I'm really just leaning towards guys like Svenskeren, Jizuke, maybe even Ignar. I think the ceiling's been reached, and I don't know if they're getting back to that ceiling. And it was pretty high for all these players. They've been world-class in their own right throughout their careers. I'm just not convinced they can get back to that level at this point.
And the last thing that I want to say about Evil Geniuses and that I'm waiting on with them still was the coaching change that they made, right? Bringing over Peter Dunn from the Mad Lions situation before in the past, what he was going to be able to do here in North America, try to turn things around, what he was going to be able to do with Evil Geniuses. I've seen bits of it, seen flashes of it. I've seen a lot of talking on Twitter. I haven't seen too many results to turn it around. So let's see that this split. Hopefully, I know it's not as simple as A, B, C for that type of thing, but I want to see some of it.
And usually we'd be saying this is your playoff bubble, right? E.g. your first playoff team. But remember, guys, summer split. Not only is it triple round robin, 27 games, 8 of these teams are making playoffs. So no Golden Guardians, no Immortals if you're going off all power rankings, which seems fair to me, but 8 of the 10 teams are going to playoffs.
I don't know what type of job I'm doing here trying to get you guys excited or sold on the LCS, but I can promise you I will not be able to get you all sold on all 8 filling in those spots to be worthy of it. I can try for the majority. I can try to get over half, and I'm pretty sure we can hype them up. We can get you convinced and excited to make that mistake of believing in North America all over again.
You just need 1 point for each
too much.
team. The environment, climate change for FlyQuest, the power of friendship for CLG, inting moments for EG. So far, those 3 we got covered. And once we do the top 5, we'll give you at least one little nugget for each squad that you will be so excited about to see 8 North American teams in the playoffs. That is it today for League Unlocked. Next episode, we'll go through 5-1 for the power rankings. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you on the flippity flip.